They called me a burden, a useless old woman living in poverty. My own son stood there at my retirement party and let his wife humiliate me in front of everyone I'd ever worked with. She laughed when she said I was nothing. The whole room went silent, waiting for me to cry or leave or just disappear like I always did. But I didn't. Instead, I told them the truth. Her perfect, wealthy parents owed me $2 million, and I was done pretending to be small. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far my story travels. I stood there in that ballroom with crystal chandeliers throwing light across faces I'd known for 30 years, and I felt my hands go numb. Not from shock, not from fear, from rage so pure it turned my blood to ice water. The retirement party was supposed to be simple, quiet, just like everything else in my life had been for the past 3 decades. My colleagues from the consulting firm had rented out the Riverside Hotel's banquet hall. Too fancy for someone like me, I'd told them, but they insisted. Margaret from accounting had ordered a cake. Robert from legal had prepared a speech. I wore my usual gray suit, the one I'd owned for 6 years, because that's what I did. I kept things modest, kept things small. I never wanted attention. But Celeste Vaughn had other plans. She arrived late, of course. She always did. The doors opened just as Robert was finishing his toast, and every head in the room turned to watch her make her entrance. That's what Celeste did. She didn't walk into rooms, she made entrances. Designer dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a year. Heels that clicked like gunshots on the marble floor. Hair swept up in some complicated style that required professional help. She looked like money. Old money. The kind of wealth that didn't just buy things but bought the appearance of superiority. My son Adrian walked 2 steps behind her, carrying her coat. I felt something twist in my chest watching that. My boy, my brilliant, ambitious boy, who'd built a successful investment firm before he turned 35, reduced to a coat rack for a woman who treated kindness like weakness. "Sorry we're late, everyone," Celeste announced, her voice carrying that practiced sweetness that never reached her eyes. Traffic was absolutely insane coming from the country club. The country club. She made sure everyone heard that detail. Adrian caught my eye across the room and gave me this apologetic half-smile, the one he'd been giving me for the past 3 years since he married her. The smile that said, "I know, Mom, but what can I do?" What he could do was grow a spine, but I didn't say that. I never said what I really thought anymore. Margaret touched my elbow. "Ignore her, Evelyn. This is your night." But it wasn't my night. It stopped being my night the moment Celeste walked through those doors. She made her way through the crowd, air-kissing people she barely knew, complimenting dresses she'd never wear, playing the role of the devoted daughter-in-law who'd graciously taken time from her busy, important life to attend this little gathering for her husband's mother. I watched her work the room and thought about the first time Adrian brought her home to meet me. "She's different, Mom," he'd said, his eyes shining with that dangerous combination of love and stupidity that turned smart men into fools. "She's sophisticated. She understands the world I'm building. What she understood was money. What she understood was status. What she understood was that my son's growing wealth could elevate her from her family's carefully maintained illusion of prosperity into actual security. But I didn't say any of that either. I smiled. I nodded. I welcomed her into my small apartment with its secondhand furniture and outdated kitchen, and I watched her eyes sweep across my life like she was cataloging evidence of my inadequacy. "This is cozy," she'd said, the pause before cozy doing all the work. Adrian had squeezed my hand. Mom likes to keep things simple. Simple. That's what he called it. That's what he believed. He had no idea. The party continued, people gave speeches. Someone presented me with a plaque, 28 years of dedicated service to Hartwell Consulting. I smiled for photos. I ate cake I didn't want. I played my role perfectly because that's what I'd been doing my entire adult life, playing a role. Then Celeste decided it was time for her performance. "Can I have everyone's attention?" She tapped her champagne glass with one of her perfectly manicured nails. The room quieted. "I know we're here to celebrate Evelyn tonight, but I just have to say something." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. That fake, warm, publicly gracious tone she used right before she stuck the knife in. Adrian looked uncomfortable but said nothing. He never said anything. "When I married Adrian," Celeste continued, I knew I was getting an incredible man. What I didn't know was that I was also getting a mother-in-law who would teach me so much about humility. A few people laughed, thinking it was a compliment. It wasn't. Evelyn has shown me that you don't need wealth or status or material things to live a meaningful life. She's taught me that true happiness comes from acceptance, from knowing your place, from being content with less. The room was starting to catch on. The laughter died. People shifted in their seats. I stood very still, my champagne glass sweating in my hand. I mean, look at this amazing woman, Celeste gestured toward me with her glass. She spent her entire career helping wealthy clients manage their money, but she herself lives in that tiny apartment in the old part of town. She shops at discount stores. She drives that ancient car that's older than some of the people in this room. More uncomfortable silence. Margaret's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. And you know what? There's something beautiful about that kind of sacrifice, about a mother who gives everything to her child and asks for nothing in return, who lives in poverty so her son can thrive. Poverty. She said the word like it was a stain. Celeste, Adrian finally spoke up, but his voice was weak, embarrassed. No, honey, I'm being sincere, she cut him off. I really admire Evelyn's choice to remain modest, to stay in her lane, to not expect anything from the success she helped create. That's when I felt it. That exact moment. The thing inside me that had been compressed and controlled and carefully managed for 30 years finally cracked. Is there a point to this? I heard myself ask. Celeste's smile sharpened. The point, Evelyn, is that you're retiring now. You're going to have even less money, even less relevance, and I just want you to know that Adrian and I are prepared to help support you. We're looking into senior living facilities that offer financial assistance. Very clean places. Basic, of course, but perfectly adequate for someone in your situation. The room went dead silent. She just offered to put me in a home, at my own retirement party, in front of everyone I'd worked with for nearly 3 decades. Adrian's face went red. Celeste, what the hell? Yeesh. Oh, Adrian, don't be embarrassed, she said, patting his arm like he was a child. Everyone here understands. Your mother is getting older. She can barely afford her current lifestyle. At some point, we have to face reality. We have to make difficult decisions about elderly relatives who can't take care of themselves. Elderly relatives who can't take care of themselves. I set my champagne glass down very carefully on the table. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. Perfectly steady. Celeste, I said quietly, how are your parents doing? She blinked, thrown by the question. My parents, they're fine. Why? I was just wondering, it's been a while since I've seen Richard and Patricia. Still living in that beautiful estate in Connecticut? Of course, she said, confused about where this was going, but unable to resist bragging. The same property my family has owned for 4 generations. 4 generations, I repeated. That's impressive. Must be expensive to maintain a property like that. Well, we manage, she said airily. When you come from real wealth, you learn how to preserve it. Real wealth. There it was. And your father's business, the import company, still successful? Now Celeste's smile was getting tight. I don't see what my family's business has to do with... I'm just curious, I interrupted. Because the last time I checked, which was this morning actually, your father's company was about 3 months away from bankruptcy. The Connecticut estate has a 3rd mortgage on it. And your mother's art collection that she's so proud of? Half of it is fake, and the other half has been promised as collateral to at least 2 different lenders. The room went absolutely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Celeste's face went white, then red, then white again. That's a lie! How dare you! It's not a lie, I said, my voice still calm, still quiet. It's the truth. The truth your parents have been hiding for the past 7 years. The truth they've been covering up with carefully maintained appearances and strategic social positioning and the kind of desperate financial juggling that only works until it doesn't. Adrian was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Mom, what are you talking about? I looked at my son. My beautiful, naive son who thought he understood the world because he'd made some money and married a pretty girl from a good family. I'm talking about the fact that 7 years ago, Richard and Patricia Vaughn were about to lose everything. The business was failing, the estate was going into foreclosure. They were about 2 months away from having to sell Patricia's jewelry just to pay their staff. That's insane, Celeste hissed. My parents would never— Your parents came to me, I continued, speaking over her. They came to my office at Hartwell Consulting in the middle of the night, desperate and terrified, begging for help. And I helped them. I gave them a private loan, $2,300,000. I saved their business. I saved their house. I saved the illusion of wealth that your entire family identity is built on. Celeste's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The loan was supposed to be repaid over 5 years, I said. With interest, of course. Very reasonable interest, considering the risk I was taking. But it's been 7 years now, and I haven't received a single payment. Not one. Your father keeps promising it's coming. Your mother keeps asking for extensions. And meanwhile, they keep living like nothing's wrong. Keep joining country clubs and hosting charity galas and sending their daughter to Europe for shopping trips. I turned my attention back to Celeste, who looked like she might actually faint. So when you talk about poverty, Celeste, and financial assistance and elderly relatives who can't take care of themselves, I want you to remember something. Your family owes me over $2 million. Your entire lifestyle, your status, your beautiful wedding to my son, the down payment on your house that you think Adrian paid for but was actually a gift from your parents, using money they borrowed from me, all of it is built on a debt to the poor old woman you just tried to humiliate in front of 50 people. The silence was deafening. Someone's phone buzzed, someone else coughed, but nobody spoke. Adrian's voice came out hoarse. Is this true? Call your father-in-law, I said simply. Ask him. Adrian pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He walked to the corner of the room. I watched him make the call, watched his face change as whoever answered, probably Richard, probably with that hearty, confident voice he used to cover panic, confirmed what I'd just revealed. Celeste was still frozen, her champagne glass tilting in her hand, liquid about to spill. You're lying, she whispered. You're a liar. I have the contracts, I said. I have the bank transfers. I have emails and text messages and recorded phone conversations where your father begs for more time and your mother promises they'll pay everything back plus interest as soon as the business recovers. Which it never did, by the way. Because your father isn't a businessman. He's a gambler playing with other people's money. Adrian came back to the table. His face was gray. It's true, he said quietly. I just talked to Richard. He confirmed it. Celeste spun toward him. Adrian, he said it was a private matter between him and Mom. He said it didn't concern us. Didn't concern us? I laughed, and it came out sharp and cold. Your wife just tried to have me declared incompetent and put in a care facility, and you think your in-laws owing me millions of dollars doesn't concern you? Everyone in the room heard that. The gasps were audible. Adrian's eyes went wide. What? I reached into my purse, the worn leather purse Celeste had probably judged the moment she saw it, and pulled out a folder. I'd been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment, or maybe waiting to see if I'd actually need it, hoping I wouldn't. But I did. I slid the folder across the table to Adrian. Page 7. The guardianship petition your wife has been preparing with her family's attorney. She was going to have me declared mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. And once I was under guardianship, with her and her parents as my appointed guardians, they'd have access to all my accounts, all my assets. They could transfer everything, liquidate everything, and there wouldn't be a thing I could do about it. Adrian opened the folder. I watched him read, watched understanding dawn across his face like a slow, terrible sunrise. Celeste, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Please tell me this isn't real. She grabbed the folder from his hands, her eyes scanning the pages. Where did you get this? This is privileged attorney-client communication. You can't have this. Your family's attorney is a drunk who leaves his briefcase in his car, I said. I have friends who know things. People talk, Celeste, especially when they think they're talking to a harmless old woman who wouldn't possibly understand legal terminology. I stood up. My legs felt strong, steady. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking up the exact amount of space I deserved. So here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to leave this party now. I'm going to go home to my modest little apartment. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to call my attorney, my real attorney, not some small-time drunk who's one complaint away from disbarment. and we're going to discuss my options regarding the Vaughn family debt and the attempted fraud you just committed. Mom, Adrian started. And you, I turned to face my son. You stood there and let her talk to me like that. You apologized for me. You were embarrassed by me. Your own mother. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You never asked why I lived the way I did. You never wondered how I paid for your private high school, your college, your business school. You never questioned where the money came from when you needed capital to start your investment firm. You just took it and assumed I was sacrificing and scraping by and making do because that fit the story you wanted to believe about your successful life. Tears were running down Adrian's face. Mom, please. I loved you enough to let you think you did it all yourself, I said, and my voice finally cracked. I loved you enough to stay small so you could feel big, but that ends tonight. I picked up my purse. I looked around the room at all those faces, colleagues, friends, people I'd worked with for decades. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Some looked angry on my behalf. Margaret was crying. Thank you all for coming, I said. It really has been a wonderful 28 years. Enjoy the rest of the party. I walked toward the exit. My footsteps echoed. Nobody tried to stop me. But just before I reached the doors, I turned back. One more thing. One more truth. Oh, and Celeste? That necklace you're wearing, the one you told everyone was a Vaughn family heirloom passed down from your grandmother? She touched it reflexively, her hand going to her throat. I bought it, I said, 3 years ago. Your mother was about to sell it to pay property taxes, and I bought it from her for $40,000. Then I suggested she tell you it was a family gift for your wedding. I thought it would make you happy. The necklace at her throat suddenly looked like a noose. Sweet dreams, Celeste, I said. And then I walked out into the night. The valet brought my car around, the ancient Honda Civic that was indeed older than some of the people at that party. I tipped him $5 and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before starting the engine. My hands were shaking now. Now that it was over, now that I was alone, I'd just blown up my entire life. I started the car and drove through the city streets, past the expensive restaurants, and the luxury condos, and the boutiques where Celeste probably spent more on a handbag than I spent on rent. The streets were wet from earlier rain, reflecting streetlights like scattered jewels. My apartment was in the old part of town, like Celeste had said, a neighborhood that used to be nice 50 years ago and was now just tired. The building had 7 floors and no elevator. I lived on the 5th. I climbed the stairs slowly, my retirement party heels clicking on concrete. Mrs. Chen from 5B had her door open, watching her evening shows. Late night, Evelyn? She called. Retirement party, I said. Ah, they treat you nice? I paused at my door, key in hand. They tried. She laughed, not understanding. You get cake? So much cake. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and stood in the dark for a moment. Small living room, tiny kitchen, 1 bedroom, furniture I'd owned for over a decade. Nothing matched, nothing was fancy. But it was paid for. Every single inch of it was paid for. I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet. Behind my winter coats and old sweaters, there was a small safe built into the wall. I'd installed it myself 23 years ago, right after my husband died and left me with nothing but debt and a 6-year-old son. I opened it. Inside were folders, bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, legal documents that told the real story of Evelyn Mercer's life. The consulting job at Hartwell was real. I really did work there for 28 years, but it was never my primary income. It was my cover. My explanation for how a widowed single mother could afford to raise a child and pay bills and keep going. The real money came from everything else. It started small. A client at Hartwell mentioned he was looking for private investors for a tech startup. This was 1998, when the internet was still new and wild and most people thought it was a fad. I'd saved $3,000. I invested all of it. The company went public 2 years later. My $3,000 became $90,000. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't celebrate. I took that money and found the next opportunity, and then the next one. I learned to read markets. I learned to spot potential. I learned that being quiet and underestimated meant people told me things they'd never tell someone they saw as competition. By the time Adrian graduated high school, I had $1.2 million in various accounts and investments. By the time he finished college, I had $3.8 million. Today, counting all assets and holdings, I was worth approximately $12 million. $12 million. Built slowly, carefully, privately, over 3 decades. And my son thought I was poor. I sat on my bed with the folders around me and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Exhausted, heartbroken, terrified of what came next. But free. My phone buzzed. Text message from Adrian. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk." "I'm so sorry. I didn't know any of this." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned my phone off. Tomorrow, I would deal with lawyers and consequences and the fallout from tonight's explosion. Tomorrow, I would figure out what to do about the Vaughn family's debt and Celeste's attempted fraud and Adrian's betrayal. But tonight, I was just going to sit here in my modest apartment and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back for 30 years. The anger, the hurt, the bitter satisfaction of watching Celeste's face when her perfect world cracked open. And underneath all of it, the grief. Because I'd loved my son enough to hide who I was. I'd loved him enough to let him believe a lie about my life so he could feel proud of his own. And he'd repaid that love by being embarrassed of me, by letting his wife mock me, by standing silent while I was humiliated. That was the part that hurt most. Not the money, not the schemes, not even the attempted fraud. The silence. My phone buzzed again, and again, messages piling up. I ignored them all. In the morning, everything would change. Lawyers would get involved. Threats would be made. Battle lines would be drawn. But tonight, in this small apartment that everyone pitied, surrounded by furniture everyone judged, I sat in the dark and let myself be angry. And I started planning my next move. Because Celeste and her family had made one critical mistake. They'd forgotten that the woman they dismissed as nothing, the woman they tried to rob and discard, was the same woman who'd built an empire from $3,000 and 30 years of patience. They'd forgotten I was dangerous. But they were about to remember. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee and watched the sun come up over the city, turning the sky from black to gray to that pale orange that never looked quite real. My phone had 43 missed calls, 17 voicemails, 62 text messages. I listened to exactly one voicemail before I stopped. It was from Patricia Vaughn, Celeste's mother. Her voice dripped with that fake warmth she'd perfected over decades of lying to people. "Evelyn, darling, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Richard and I would love to have lunch with you this week and clear everything up. I'm sure we can come to some kind of arrangement that works for everyone. No need to involve lawyers or make this unpleasant. We're family, after all." Family. That word again. The word people used when they wanted something from you. I deleted the message. At 7:30 in the morning, I called my attorney. Not the one Hartwell Consulting recommended for employee matters. My real attorney. The one I'd hired 5 years ago when my investments started getting complicated and I needed someone who understood what I was actually building. His name was Marcus Chen. He'd graduated top of his class from Yale Law, worked at a white shoe firm for 6 years, then left to start his own practice because he was tired of helping rich people get richer through loopholes. He was 42, sharp as broken glass, and he didn't take cases unless they interested him. My case interested him. "Mrs. Mercer," he answered on the second ring. "I was expecting your call. I assume something happened." "How did you know?" "Because 3 hours ago I received a very aggressive email from Gerald Hampton threatening legal action if you pursue collection on the Vaughn loan. Gerald Hampton is a mediocre attorney who represents mediocre people. He only gets aggressive when his clients are panicking." I felt a grim satisfaction hearing that. They're already trying to threaten me. Of course they are. That's what people do when they're caught. They bluff. What exactly happened last night? I told him everything. The retirement party, Celeste's speech, my revelation about the loan, the guardianship petition. All of it. Marcus was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then he said, "Well, you certainly don't do anything halfway." I'm done being quiet about this. Good, because quiet time is over. Hampton's email mentioned something about you obtaining privileged documents illegally, the guardianship petition. I have a copy, I admitted. Someone gave it to me. I don't want to know how you got it, Marcus said. But we need to be smart here. They're going to claim you're unstable, vindictive, possibly senile. They're going to paint you as a confused elderly woman making accusations she can't prove. I can prove everything. I know you can, but proof and perception are different things. Right now, you need to think about what you actually want from this situation. I looked around my small kitchen, the chipped countertop, the ancient refrigerator that hummed too loud, the table I'd bought at a yard sale 20 years ago. I want them to stop pretending, I said. I want the truth out in the open. The truth about what? The loan? Your finances? All of it? All of it. Marcus exhaled slowly. Evelyn, if we go public with this, your whole life changes. Everyone will know you're not the modest consultant living paycheck to paycheck. Your son will know. Your former colleagues will know. Are you ready for that? Was I ready? I'd been hiding for 30 years, playing small, making myself invisible so Adrian could shine. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Then here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing a formal demand for repayment of the Vaughn loan, including accrued interest and penalties for late payment. Second, I'm filing a complaint with the State Bar Association regarding Gerald Hampton's involvement in the guardianship scheme. Third, I'm requesting a full audit of Richard Vaughn's business to verify his ability to repay. Will that work? It'll start the process. But Evelyn, you need to understand something. When you go after people like the Vaughns, they don't just roll over. They fight dirty. They'll dig into your past, spread rumors, try to destroy your credibility. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Celeste's face when I revealed the loan, the shock, the rage, the humiliation. Let them try, I said. After I hung up with Marcus, I made another call. This one to my bank. I needed to move some assets around, protect certain accounts, make sure the Vaughns couldn't touch anything if they tried something desperate. The bank manager, Stephen, knew me. Not as a rich client, but as the nice lady who came in once a month to deposit her modest paycheck. He had no idea about the other accounts, the investment portfolios, the real estate holdings. Mrs. Mercer, good morning. What can I help you with today? I need to schedule an appointment, today if possible. I need to restructure some accounts. Of course. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, but there might be some people making inquiries about my finances soon, and I want to make sure everything's properly secured. There was a pause. What kind of inquiries? The hostile kind. Another pause. I see. Let me check the schedule. Can you come in at 10? I'll be there. I hung up and realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From the strange, terrifying freedom of finally fighting back after years of taking hits and staying quiet. My phone rang. Adrian. I stared at his name on the screen for 3 rings before I answered. Mom. His voice sounded wrecked, like he'd been crying. Mom, please, I need to talk to you. So talk. Not on the phone. Can I come over? I'm already in my car. I'm 10 minutes away. I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd hidden from him for 3 decades. Part of me wanted to say no, to make him wait, to make him hurt the way I'd been hurting, but he was still my son. Fine, I said. 10 minutes. I used those 10 minutes to put away the folders from my safe, to make the apartment look exactly like what Adrian expected. Modest, simple, poor. When he knocked, I almost didn't answer. Almost made him stand in the hallway and wonder if I'd left. If I disappeared from his life the way he'd been so ready to let me disappear into some facility Celeste picked out. But I opened the door. Adrian looked terrible. His eyes were red. His expensive suit was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His hair, usually perfectly styled, stuck up at odd angles. Mom, he said, and his voice broke. I stepped aside. Come in. He walked into my apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. And maybe he was, really seeing it, not just glancing around and feeling vaguely uncomfortable about his poor mother's living situation, but actually looking at the choices I'd made. I didn't know, he said, standing in the middle of my living room. I swear to God, Mom, I didn't know about any of it. The loan, the guardianship thing, None of it. You didn't want to know. That's not fair, isn't it? I stayed by the door, keeping distance between us. When's the last time you asked me how I was doing financially? Really asked? He opened his mouth, closed it. I don't know. When's the last time you wondered how I paid for your education? Or where the money came from when you needed startup capital for your firm? You said you had some savings from when Dad was alive. Your father died broke, Adrian. He left us with $70,000 in debt. I was 28 years old with a 6-year-old son and no money. Did you really think some savings covered private school and college and business school and $100,000 in startup capital? His face went pale. I thought maybe you'd inherited something, or you didn't think about it at all, I finished, because it was easier not to. Easier to believe I was just scraping by, sacrificing, making it work somehow. That fit the story you wanted, the successful son who pulled himself up, who built something from nothing. That's not fair, he repeated, but there was no strength in it. You want to talk about fair? I felt anger rising in my chest like floodwater. You stood there last night and let your wife call me a burden. You were embarrassed by me. I could see it on your face, Adrian. You were ashamed of your poor mother at her own retirement party. I didn't know she was going to say those things. But you didn't stop her. My voice cracked. You didn't defend me. You didn't tell her she was out of line. You just stood there looking uncomfortable and wishing I would disappear so you wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment of having a mother who isn't rich and polished and impressive. Tears were running down his face now. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Then what will? Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to list every sacrifice, every choice I'd made, every time I'd hidden who I was so he could feel good about himself. But what came out instead was quieter, sadder. You can't make it right, Adrian. That's the problem. You can't undo last night. You can't undo 3 years of letting Celeste treat me like I'm worthless. You can't undo the fact that when it came down to it, you chose her over me without even thinking about it. That's not true. It is true. And the worst part is, I did this. I let you believe I was small and struggling because I thought it would protect you. I thought if you didn't know about the money, you'd stay humble. You'd appreciate what you built. But all I did was teach you to be ashamed of where you came from. Adrian sank onto my couch, his head in his hands. What do you want me to do? I want you to go home to your wife and have a very serious conversation about what she tried to do to me. I want you to ask yourself if you can stay married to someone who would forge legal documents to steal from your mother, and then I want you to stay out of my way while I handle the Vaughn family debt. His head snapped up. You're really going after them. I'm collecting what they owe me. Yes. Mom, they don't have that kind of money. It'll destroy them. They should have thought of that before they tried to have me declared incompetent. Celeste's parents are the ones who owe you, not Celeste. I laughed. It came out bitter. You think Celeste didn't know? You think she wasn't in on the whole thing? Adrian, wake up. Your wife married you because her family needed your money, because you were successful and rising and could help maintain their lifestyle while they figured out how to get rid of their debt to me. You don't know that, don't I? How much money have you given Richard for his business over the past 3 years? How many investments has he talked you into? Adrian's face changed. That's different. He's my father-in-law. I was helping family. How much? I don't see how that's... How much, Adrian? He was quiet for a long moment. About $300,000, total. I felt sick. $300,000 to a man who owes me over $2 million and hasn't made a single payment. Did Celeste know you were giving her father money? Of course she knew. She encouraged it. She said we should support family. Support family, I repeated. That's interesting. Because when I needed support last night, when I was being humiliated in front of 50 people, where was your family's support then? He didn't have an answer for that. We sat in silence for a while. I could hear Mrs. Chen's TV through the wall, a game show, audience cheering. Finally, Adrian spoke. What happens now? Now? Now my attorney files paperwork demanding repayment of the loan. Richard and Patricia will panic. They'll probably try to negotiate, offer some kind of payment plan they have no intention of following through on. When that doesn't work, they'll try to discredit me, maybe claim I'm lying about the loan. Maybe claim I'm senile and confused. They can't do that. You have proof. I have proof. But they have connections and social standing and the kind of desperation that makes people do terrible things, so I'm prepared for a fight. Adrian stood up. He looked lost, like a kid who'd just realized his parents were actually people with their own lives and problems and secrets. I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say anything. You have to decide. Decide what kind of man you want to be. Decide if you can live with a woman who tried to rob your mother. Decide if money and status and a beautiful wife are worth more than basic human decency. That's not fair. I love Celeste. I know you do. But love isn't enough when the person you love is willing to destroy other people to get what they want. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, I said, but it happened anyway. After he left, I stood in my empty apartment and felt something crack open in my chest. Not my heart breaking. That had already happened last night. This was something else. Something like grief mixed with relief. I'd spent 30 years protecting Adrian from the truth, and in doing that, I'd failed to teach him the most important lesson of all. That people aren't disposable. That loyalty matters. That your mother isn't an embarrassment just because she doesn't fit into your successful life. My phone buzzed. Marcus. The demand letter is ready to go, but before I send it, you need to know something. Gerald Hampton called me. He wants to negotiate. Already? Like I said, they're panicking. He claims the Vaughns are willing to discuss a payment plan. He wants to meet tomorrow. You, me, him, and the Vaughns. What do you think? I think it's a trap. I think they want to get you in a room and try to intimidate you into accepting pennies on the dollar. But I also think we should go because watching them squirm will be informative. Then let's do it. Tomorrow at 2. Hampton's office. And Evelyn? Dress nice. Show them who they're really dealing with. After I hung up, I stood in front of my closet for a long time. My clothes were practical, sensible. The wardrobe of a woman who'd spent 30 years trying not to be noticed. But I had other clothes, expensive clothes I'd bought over the years for the rare occasions when I needed to attend investor meetings or high-level business functions. Clothes I kept in the back of my closet, behind the modest gray suits and discount store dresses. I pulled out a black pantsuit, Italian, tailored, the kind of outfit that cost more than my car. Tomorrow, the Vaughns were going to see exactly who they'd tried to rob. The next day, I took a taxi to Gerald Hampton's office. Marcus had offered to pick me up, but I wanted to arrive on my own terms. Hampton's office was in a converted brownstone in the expensive part of downtown, the kind of place that looked impressive but was really just old money clinging to respectability. Marcus was waiting outside when my taxi pulled up. "You look ready for war," he said, taking in my outfit. "Good. That's what this is." Inside, the receptionist tried to make us wait, said Mr. Hampton was running behind, but Marcus just smiled his sharp smile and said, "Tell him we're here. If he wants to keep Mrs. Mercer waiting, we can conduct this meeting in court instead." We were shown into a conference room within 2 minutes. Richard and Patricia Vaughn were already there, sitting on one side of a long mahogany table. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Patricia's makeup couldn't quite hide the puffiness around her eyes. Gerald Hampton sat at the head of the table, trying to project authority. They all stared when I walked in. I could see Patricia doing the math, looking at my suit, my shoes, the leather briefcase Marcus had lent me, trying to reconcile this version of me with the poor old woman she thought she knew. "Mrs. Mercer," Hampton said, standing. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." I sat. Marcus sat beside me. Neither of us smiled. "I think we can resolve this matter quickly and amicably," Hampton began. "My clients acknowledge that there was a loan agreement. However, there are some irregularities in the documentation that we believe—" "Stop," Marcus cut him off. "Let's not waste time with the opening bluff. We both know the loan is legitimate. We both know it's past due. We both know your clients attempted to defraud Mrs. Mercer through a fraudulent guardianship petition. So let's skip to the part where you tell us what you're actually offering." Hampton's face went red. He wasn't used to being interrupted. "I'm trying to facilitate a reasonable discussion." "Then be reasonable," Marcus said. "What's your offer?" Richard cleared his throat. His voice came out rough. "Evelyn, I think there's been a misunderstanding. When Patricia and I came to you 7 years ago, we were in a difficult position. You helped us. We're grateful. But the terms of the loan were always meant to be flexible. Flexible, I repeated. The interest rate was punitive. The repayment schedule was unrealistic. We always assumed we'd renegotiate when the business recovered. The business never recovered, I said, because you kept spending money you didn't have on a lifestyle you couldn't afford. Patricia spoke up, her voice tight. We have expenses. The estate requires constant maintenance. We have social obligations. You can't just pay your debts? I finished. Is that what you were going to say? Don't put words in my mouth. Then what exactly are you saying, Patricia? Because from where I'm sitting, you've had 7 years to make a single payment. One payment, and you haven't. Instead, you've been planning to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything I own. That's a lie, she hissed. We never... Marcus slid a folder across the table. This is a copy of the guardianship petition prepared by Mr. Hampton. It names you and your husband as proposed guardians. It claims Mrs. Mercer is suffering from dementia and is unable to manage her own affairs. It was going to be filed next month. Hampton grabbed the folder. His face went white as he flipped through the pages. Where did you get this? That's not relevant, Marcus said. What's relevant is that it exists. What's relevant is that your clients conspired to commit fraud. This is privileged. This is evidence of a crime. The room went quiet. Richard's hands were shaking. We were just exploring options. We never actually filed. You were planning to, I said. You were going to have me locked away in some facility, take control of my accounts, and make my debt to you disappear. And then what? Keep me drugged and hidden until I died? Let your daughter inherit whatever was left? We would never... You already did. I stood up, my voice rising. You already tried. The only reason you didn't succeed is because someone warned me. Someone who actually gave a damn about what happened to me. Patricia was crying now, her perfect makeup running. Evelyn, please, we can work this out. We can arrange payments. Give us time. You've had 7 years. We need more time. You need consequences, I corrected. You need to understand that you can't just use people and throw them away when they're no longer useful. Richard stood up. If you pursue this, you'll destroy us. The business will collapse. We'll lose the estate. Everything you've built is a lie, I said. It's a house of cards held together with my money and other people's ignorance. And I'm done propping it up. What do you want? Richard's voice cracked. Just tell us what you want. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd come to my office 7 years ago, desperate and begging. This man who'd promised me his business would recover. His fortunes would turn around. He just needed a little help. This man who'd raised a daughter to think she was better than everyone else while owing millions to the woman she mocked as poor. I want my money, I said. All of it, plus interest. $2,640,000. Payable within 90 days. Patricia gasped. That's impossible. We don't have that kind of liquid capital. Then sell something. Sell the estate. Sell the art collection. Sell whatever you need to sell. But the debt gets paid. You're being unreasonable, Hampton tried. My clients are willing to negotiate in good faith. Good faith? I laughed. They tried to have me declared insane. They tried to steal everything I own. They raised a daughter who married my son specifically to get access to his money while they figured out how to eliminate their debt to me. Where exactly is the good faith in any of that? The room went dead silent. Richard's face was gray. How did I figure it out? I'm not stupid, Richard. I'm just quiet. There's a difference. Celeste targeted Adrian. She researched him, pursued him, made herself exactly what he was looking for. A beautiful woman from an old family who made him feel successful and important. And meanwhile, you've been bleeding him dry with your fake investment opportunities. Adrian gave us that money willingly. Adrian gave you that money because he trusted you, because he thought he was helping family. He had no idea he was just funding your desperate attempt to keep up appearances while you owed me millions. Patricia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is outrageous. We won't sit here and be accused. Then leave, I said simply. Leave and wait for the lawsuit, because that's what happens next. Marcus files a civil complaint. We go to court. Everything becomes public record. Every transaction, every lie, every desperate scheme. Everyone in your social circle will know exactly how broke you really are. She sat back down. Hampton tried one more time. Mrs. Mercer, surely we can reach some kind of compromise. A payment plan over 10 years. 90 days, I repeated. And if you can't pay, I'll start seizing assets. The estate, the cars, Patricia's jewelry. Everything goes on the auction block until the debt is satisfied. You vindictive bitch, Patricia whispered. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. No, Patricia. I'm not vindictive. I'm just done being nice. I stood up, gathered my things. Marcus stood with me. You have 72 hours to accept these terms, I said. After that, we go to court. Your choice. We left them sitting there in that conference room, their perfect world crumbling around them. Outside, Marcus was grinning. That was beautiful. You made them look like what they are. It's not over yet. They'll fight. Let them fight. We have everything we need to bury them. But as I got into the taxi, I felt something twist in my stomach. Not regret. Not exactly. More like the weight of what I'd just done. I'd declared war on my son's in-laws. I'd exposed secrets that would destroy a family. I'd chosen justice over peace. And somewhere in this city, Adrian was going to have to choose which side he was on. The question was whether I was ready to lose my son over $2 million and a principal. The answer, I realized as the taxi pulled away from Hampton's office, was yes. I was ready. Because some things mattered more than keeping the peace. Some things mattered more than being loved. And dignity, self-respect, the right to not be robbed by people who thought you were too weak to fight back, those things mattered most of all. The 72 hours passed like watching ice melt. Slow, inevitable, cold. I spent them preparing for war. Marcus filed preliminary motions with the court. I moved money between accounts, locked down assets, made sure nothing could be touched if the Vaughns tried something desperate. I didn't sleep much. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Adrian's face in my apartment, the confusion, the hurt, the choice he was going to have to make. On the third day, Hampton's office called. They were rejecting my terms, claiming the loan was usurious, the interest unconscionable, the whole agreement unenforceable. Marcus had been expecting this. They're stalling, he said when I called him, buying time to hide assets or find another way out. But it doesn't matter. We file tomorrow. And then? And then it gets ugly. He wasn't wrong. The lawsuit hit the local business news within 24 hours. Someone leaked it, probably Hampton, trying to control the narrative. The headline read, Elderly Consultant Sues Prominent Family Over Disputed Loan. Elderly consultant. Like I was some confused old woman making wild accusations. The article painted the Vaughns as victims of a predatory lender. It mentioned my modest lifestyle and suggested I was trying to extort money from a respectable family. It quoted Patricia saying she was heartbroken, that someone she'd tried to help was now turning on them in their time of need. I threw the newspaper across my kitchen. It hit the wall and scattered across the floor. My phone rang. Margaret from the office. Evelyn, I just saw the news. What the hell is going on? It's complicated. The article makes it sound like you're trying to scam them. The article is lying, I said. The Vaughns owe me over $2 million. They've known about it for 7 years, and when they couldn't pay, they tried to have me declared incompetent so they could steal everything I own. Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus Christ, Evelyn. Yeah. Why didn't you ever say anything about the money, about what you were really doing? I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built in secret. Because I didn't want people treating me differently. I didn't want Adrian to know. I thought if I kept it quiet, kept it simple, everyone would be better off. And now? Now I'm done being quiet. But being loud came with consequences I hadn't fully anticipated. The next day, someone spray-painted "greedy bitch" across my building's front entrance. The landlord, Mr. Kowalski, called me at 6 a.m, furious. Mrs. Mercer, I don't know what's going on with you, but this is unacceptable. I've got tenants complaining. I've got parents afraid to walk their kids past this building. You need to fix this. I'll pay for the cleanup. It's not about the money. It's about the disruption. I've had 3 reporters knocking on my door asking about you. One of them tried to interview Mrs. Chen. I felt sick. I'm sorry. I never meant... I don't care what you meant. You've got 30 days to figure this out or find a new place to live. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch, still in my pajamas, and felt the walls closing in. This was what happened when you fought back, when you stopped accepting your place and demanded what was yours. The world punished you for it. My phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. You made a mistake going after us. Drop the lawsuit or things get worse. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I forwarded it to Marcus. His response came immediately. Forward all threats to me. Don't respond. Don't engage. Let them dig their own grave. But it didn't stop there. Someone created a fake social media account in my name and started posting bizarre, rambling messages about conspiracies and persecution. Someone else posted my address online with a caption suggesting I was a dangerous predator targeting innocent families. My mailbox filled with hate mail, letters calling me a liar, a con artist, a parasite. One envelope contained a dead rat. I stopped checking the mail. The reporters were worse. They camped outside my building, shoving cameras in my face every time I left for the grocery store or the bank. They asked questions designed to make me look guilty. Mrs. Mercer, is it true you're extorting the Vaughn family? Mrs. Mercer, why are you targeting a family that tried to help you? Mrs. Mercer, do you feel guilty about destroying innocent people's lives? I learned to walk past them without speaking, learned to keep my head down and my mouth shut. But it was exhausting, humiliating, and through it all, Adrian didn't call. 2 weeks into the public nightmare, I finally broke down and called him. He answered on the 5th ring. Mom, I need to know where you stand, I said. No greeting, no small talk. Are you with me or against me? It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Your wife's family tried to rob me. They're currently destroying my reputation and making my life hell. Either you believe me and support me, or you think I'm lying and you stand with them. Which is it? I heard him exhale, heard voices in the background. Celeste, probably, telling him what to say. Mom, I believe that you gave them money. But the rest of it, the guardianship thing, the conspiracy, I don't know. Celeste says her parents were just exploring options for your care in case you needed help someday. That it wasn't malicious. Something inside me went numb. You believe her? I believe there might be a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated. Adrian, they tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. They prepared legal documents claiming I had dementia. They were going to lock me away and steal everything I own. That's not a misunderstanding. That's attempted theft. You don't know that's what they intended. I have the documents. I have emails. I have recordings of your father-in-law admitting the loan exists and promising to pay it back. Then why didn't you ever tell me? His voice rose. If you had all this money, all this evidence, why did you let me think you were struggling? Why did you lie to me my whole life? And there it was. The real issue. Not whether I was right, not whether I'd been wronged, but whether I'd lied to him. I didn't lie, I said quietly. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. No, it's not. I protected you from knowing something that would have changed how you saw yourself. I let you believe you earned everything on your own because I wanted you to have pride in what you built. But I didn't build it on my own, did I? You paid for my education. You gave me startup capital. Everything I thought I accomplished was really just you pulling strings in the background. I didn't pull strings. I gave you opportunities. What you did with them was all you. How am I supposed to know that now? How am I supposed to know what was me and what was you? I felt tears burning behind my eyes. Adrian, I'm your mother. Everything I did was because I loved you, because I wanted you to succeed. And now you're destroying my wife's family because of what? Pride? Revenge? Justice, I corrected. I'm asking for what I'm owed. That's not revenge. That's basic fairness. It's going to destroy them. They tried to destroy me first. Their family, Mom. And there it was. The line drawn in sand. The choice made. I'm family too, I said. Or I used to be. Don't do that. Don't make this about, you chose her, I interrupted. You chose a woman who humiliated me, whose family tried to rob me, whose parents are using you as an ATM while they owe me millions. You chose them over me. I'm trying to be fair to everyone. There's no fair in this, Adrian. There's right and wrong, and you picked wrong. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor and I left it there, sinking onto my couch, and finally letting myself cry. I'd lost him. My son. The person I'd sacrificed everything for. The reason I'd hidden who I was and what I'd built. I'd lost him to a woman who didn't love him and a family that was using him. And the worst part was knowing I'd enabled it. By hiding my wealth, by playing small, by letting Adrian think I needed his pity instead of his respect, I taught him I was disposable. The phone rang. I didn't answer it. It rang again. And again. Finally, I picked it up. Marcus. We got them, he said without preamble. I just received documentation from a source inside Richard's business. He's been moving money offshore, trying to hide assets before we can seize them. It's exactly the kind of fraud that turns a civil case into a criminal one. I wiped my eyes. What does that mean? It means we can file a criminal complaint in addition to the civil suit. It means Richard could go to prison. Prison. The word hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. This is good news. This gives us leverage. We can force a settlement now. Probably get full payment plus damages. And if they can't pay, then Richard goes to jail and we seize everything they own. The estate, the business, all of it. I thought about Celeste, about Adrian, about what it would do to their marriage if his father-in-law went to prison because of me. Do it, I said. You're sure? They tried to rob me. They tried to ruin me. Now they're moving money to avoid paying what they owe. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, I'll file the paperwork tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in the dark and wondered when I'd become this person. This hard, angry woman who could send someone to prison without hesitation. But then I thought about the retirement party, about Celeste's speech, about Adrian's silence, about years of hiding who I was so other people could feel comfortable. And I realized I hadn't become this person. I'd always been her. I'd just been pretending not to be. The criminal complaint made national news. Suddenly, it wasn't just a local dispute about a loan. It was a story about fraud, hidden wealth, and elderly abuse. The narrative shifted. Articles started appearing with headlines like "Prominent Family Accused of Elder Financial Exploitation" and "Connecticut Elite Caught in Multi-Million-Dollar Fraud Scheme." My phone started ringing with reporters who actually wanted my side of the story. I didn't talk to any of them. Marcus handled all press inquiries with a simple statement. Mrs. Mercer is a victim of attempted fraud. She's seeking justice through the legal system. She has no further comment at this time. But the damage to the Vaughns was catastrophic. Richard's business partners started distancing themselves. Investors pulled out. Clients canceled contracts. The estate went up for sale, but nobody would touch it once the fraud investigation became public. Patricia's social circle evaporated overnight. Invitations were rescinded. Memberships were quietly terminated. The people who'd smiled and air-kissed her at charity galas suddenly couldn't remember her name. It was brutal to watch. And I felt nothing. 3 weeks after the criminal complaint was filed, Hampton called Marcus requesting an emergency meeting. They wanted to settle. We met in a different location this time, a mediator's office downtown, neutral territory. Richard and Patricia looked like different people. Richard had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. Patricia's hair was gray at the roots, her makeup inexpertly applied. They looked their age. They looked defeated. Hampton did all the talking. My clients are prepared to offer full repayment of the principal loan amount, $2,300,000, payable immediately upon sale of the Connecticut estate. Plus interest, Marcus said, plus penalties, plus legal fees. The total amount owed is now $3,100,000. Hampton's face twitched. That's unreasonable. That's what happens when you commit fraud and force someone into litigation. The price goes up. Richard spoke for the first time. His voice was hollow. We don't have that kind of money, even with the estate sale. Then you'll need to sell other assets, Marcus said. The cars, the art collection, Patricia's jewelry, your boat, whatever it takes. That will leave us with nothing, Patricia whispered. You should have thought of that before you tried to steal from my client, Marcus replied. I watched them sit there, broken and desperate, and waited to feel something. Victory, maybe. Satisfaction. But all I felt was tired. There's one more thing, I said. Everyone turned to look at me. I want a written confession, signed and notarized.
admitting that you took the loan, that you failed to repay it, and that you attempted to fraudulently obtain guardianship over me to avoid your debt. I want it in writing." "Absolutely not," Hampton said. "That would be admitting to criminal conduct."
"Then we go to trial," I said simply, "and Richard goes to prison." Patricia started crying. Not pretty, delicate tears, ugly, desperate sobs. Richard put his head in his hands. "Give us a moment," Hampton said. They huddled in the corner, whispering urgently. I could see Patricia shaking her head, see Richard's shoulders slumping further and further. When they came back to the table, Richard looked like he'd aged another 10 years. "We'll agree to your terms," he said, "all of them. We'll sign the confession. We'll sell everything. We'll pay what we owe." "In exchange for what?" Marcus asked. "In exchange for Mrs. Mercer not pursuing criminal charges, in exchange for this ending." Marcus looked at me. I nodded. "Done," Marcus said. "We'll draw up the settlement agreement. You have 72 hours to sign." As we stood to leave, Patricia grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "Are you satisfied? You've destroyed us. Everything we built, everything we had, gone. Our daughter's marriage is falling apart. Our grandchildren will grow up knowing their family is bankrupt. Was it worth it, Evelyn? Was your revenge worth all this destruction?" I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face, at the hate and desperation and fear. "You tried to have me declared insane," I said quietly. "You tried to lock me away and steal everything I own. You humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. You taught your daughter to treat me like garbage, and now you're asking if getting my money back was worth it?" I pulled my arm free. "Yes, Patricia, it was worth it." We left them there, sitting in that mediator's office with the ruins of their life scattered around them. Outside, Marcus was grinning. That was perfect, everything we wanted. It doesn't feel perfect. It never does. But you won, Evelyn. You beat them. Yeah, I said, I won. But winning felt a lot like losing. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. The Vaughns sold everything. The estate went to a tech billionaire for below market value. The art collection was auctioned off piece by piece. Patricia's jewelry, the cars, the boat, all of it went to pay the debt. When the final payment cleared my account, I stared at the bank statement for a long time. $3,100,000. I'd gotten every penny I was owed, and it felt completely empty. That night, someone knocked on my door. I almost didn't answer. I was tired of reporters, tired of threats, tired of everything. But something made me look through the peephole. It was Celeste. She stood in my hallway alone. No designer outfit, no perfect hair. She wore jeans and a sweater, and she looked exhausted. I opened the door. "What do you want?" "To talk," she said. "Just 5 minutes, please." I should have said no, should have closed the door in her face. But curiosity won. I let her in. She stood in my living room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. Maybe she was, really seeing it. "My parents lost everything," she said. "They're living in a rental apartment in Pennsylvania. My mother is working as a receptionist. She's 63 years old, and she's answering phones for $12 an hour." "I'm sorry," I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. "Are you? Because you did this. You destroyed them." "They destroyed themselves. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences." Celeste's face crumpled. "Adrian left me." I felt something twist in my chest. "What?" 3 days ago. He said he couldn't live with what my family did to you. He said he couldn't trust me anymore. He moved out. He filed for separation. I should have felt vindicated, should have felt like justice was served, but all I felt was sad. "I didn't want that," I said. "Didn't you? Isn't this what you wanted, to break us up, to punish me for being a bitch at your retirement party?" "I wanted my money. I wanted to not be robbed, that's all." "You wanted revenge," Celeste said, "and you got it. You got everything. My parents are broke. My marriage is over. Adrian won't even talk to me about his mother anymore. You won." She started crying, not like Patricia's desperate sobs, quieter, emptier. "I was awful to you," she said. "I know that. I thought you were pathetic, living in this tiny apartment, working your little job, being so proud of your modest lifestyle. I thought you were nothing. I know. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About what matters.
about who I was supposed to be.
She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. But did you have to destroy everyone? Did you have to take it this far? What did you want me to do, Celeste? Let your parents rob me? Let you lock me away in some facility? Pretend it didn't happen so you could all keep living your comfortable lives built on my money? I want to go back, she whispered. I want to go back to before the retirement party and do everything differently. We can't go back. I know. She wiped her eyes. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. Does Adrian know? Not yet. I only found out yesterday, and I don't know if I should even tell him. He hates me now. He hates what my family did. Maybe it's better if he doesn't know. I sat down heavily on my couch. You have to tell him. Why? So he can feel obligated to stay with me? So he can resent me and the baby for the rest of his life? Because it's his child. Because he deserves to know. Because keeping secrets destroys everything. I looked at her. I should know. Celeste sank into the chair across from me. I don't know how to fix this. Any of it. I don't either. We sat in silence for a while. Two women who'd been at war, now just tired and broken and lost. I'm sorry, Celeste said finally, for everything, for the party, for what my parents tried to do, for being so terrible to you. I'm sorry too, I said, for not finding another way, for letting it get this bad. Did it have to get this bad? I thought about that, about all the choices I'd made, about staying quiet for 30 years, then fighting back so hard it destroyed everything. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe. Maybe not. But it's done now. Celeste stood up. I should go. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, that I understand what I did wrong, even if it's too late. She walked to the door, put her hand on the knob. Celeste, I said. She turned back. Tell Adrian about the baby. Whatever else happens, tell him. She nodded. And then she was gone. I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the spoils of my victory, and wondered what the hell I'd actually won. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Settlement funds have cleared. Congratulations. You're officially $3 million richer. $3 million. The price of my dignity, the cost of my relationships, the value of proving I wasn't someone who could be pushed around. I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built in secret, at the woman I'd pretended to be. And I realized something that made my stomach drop. I was just as alone now as I'd been before. Richer, yes. Vindicated, definitely. But alone. The Vaughns were destroyed. Adrian was gone. Celeste was pregnant and broken. My neighbors avoided me. My former colleagues whispered about me. I'd won the war, but I'd lost everything else. And sitting there in the dark, watching the city lights flicker outside my window, I started to wonder if revenge was just another word for destroying yourself while destroying your enemies. If justice was just a prettier name for mutual annihilation. If I'd spent 30 years hiding who I was, only to become someone I didn't recognize when I finally stepped into the light. The answer didn't come that night, or the next. But somewhere in the weeks that followed, as the dust settled and the lawsuits ended and the silence stretched longer and longer, I started to understand something I'd been avoiding. Winning and being right weren't the same as being happy, and money couldn't buy back the things I'd lost. The realization didn't fix anything. It just sat there in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold, reminding me every morning that I'd burned down my entire life to prove a point. 3 months passed. The settlement money sat in my accounts, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to spend it. Couldn't even look at the statements without feeling sick. I moved out of the apartment. Mr. Kowalski had made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore, and honestly, I couldn't stand being there. Too many memories. Too many reporters who still knew the address. Too much spray paint that kept reappearing no matter how many times it got cleaned off. I bought a condo downtown. Nothing flashy, just a place with better security and neighbors who didn't know my story. I furnished it with the same secondhand pieces from my old apartment. Couldn't bring myself to buy new things. Didn't feel right. Marcus thought I was insane. You have $12 million, he said when he helped me move. You could buy a penthouse. You could buy a house. You could buy anything you want. I don't want anything. He set down the box he was carrying and looked at me. Really looked. Evelyn, you won. You got everything you fought for. Why do you look like you lost? Because I did lose. I lost my son. I lost my family. I spent 30 years building something and it all fell apart in 3 months. You didn't lose your son. He made his choice. Same thing. Is it? Marcus sat on my old couch, now looking out of place in the new condo. Have you tried calling him? Every day for the first month, he never answered. And after that? I stopped trying. Maybe you stopped too soon. I shook my head. He knows where I am. If he wanted to talk, he would. But Marcus's words stuck with me. That night, alone in my new place with boxes still unpacked and furniture arranged all wrong, I pulled out my phone and stared at Adrian's number. My finger hovered over the call button for 5 full minutes. I didn't press it. Instead, I did what I'd been doing every night since the settlement. I poured a glass of wine I didn't drink and sat by the window watching the city lights and wondering when I'd become someone I didn't recognize. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Mercer? A woman's voice. Young, nervous. Yes? My name is Jennifer Torres. I'm a reporter with the Metropolitan Journal. I'm working on a feature story about financial abuse of elderly individuals, and I was hoping to interview you. No comment, I said automatically. Please just hear me out. This isn't about the Vaughns. This is about you, about your story, about how many people are in similar situations and don't have the resources to fight back like you did. I said no comment. Mrs. Mercer, you could help people. Your story could show other victims that they don't have to accept abuse, that they can fight back. I almost hung up, but something in her voice stopped me, a sincerity I hadn't heard from any of the other reporters who'd hounded me. What do you want to know? We met 2 days later at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. Jennifer was younger than I expected, maybe 28, with earnest eyes and a notebook she kept flipping through nervously. Thank you for agreeing to this, she said. I know you've been through a lot. That's an understatement, she smiled. It was genuine. Can I ask you something? Why did you hide your wealth for so long? I thought about that, about all the reasons I'd told myself over the years. I thought I was protecting my son, I said finally. I thought if he knew I had money, he'd become entitled, lazy, dependent. I wanted him to make something of himself. Did it work? He made something of himself, but he also learned to be ashamed of me, so no, I guess it didn't work. Jennifer wrote something in her notebook. Do you regret how you handled the situation with the Vaughns? Did I regret it? That was the question I'd been asking myself every night for 3 months. I regret that it had to happen at all, I said. I regret that people I helped, people I trusted, tried to destroy me. I regret that my son chose his wife's family over his own mother. But do I regret fighting back? No, I don't regret that. Even though it cost you your relationship with your son, the question hit like a punch. He cost me that relationship, not me. He's the one who chose to believe I was the villain in this story. Have you tried to reconcile? How do you reconcile with someone who thinks you're a monster? Jennifer looked up from her notebook. Do you think you're a monster? I stared at my coffee. I think I'm a woman who got tired of being treated like nothing, and when I fought back, everyone decided that made me the bad guy. The interview went on for another hour. Jennifer asked careful questions, took detailed notes, and never once made me feel like I was being judged. It was the first conversation I'd had in months that didn't leave me feeling defensive or angry or empty. When we finished, she closed her notebook and looked at me with something like sympathy. Can I tell you something off the record? Sure. My grandmother went through something similar. Not the exact same situation, but close enough. Her son's wife convinced him that my grandmother was getting senile and needed to be in a home. They tried to take control of her finances, sell her house, everything. She died fighting them in court. Never got to see it resolved. I'm sorry. Don't be. She would have loved your story. She would have loved that you won. Winning doesn't feel like I thought it would. It never does, Jennifer said. But you survived. You're still here. That counts for something. The article came out 2 weeks later. Front page of the Metropolitan Journal's Sunday edition. The headline read, "The Woman Who Refused to Disappear." It was fair. Balanced. It told my story without making me a villain or a saint. It included interviews with other elderly people who'd been exploited by family members.
statistics about financial abuse, resources for people in similar situations. It made me human instead of just a headline. My phone started ringing within an hour of publication, news stations wanting follow-up interviews, advocacy groups asking me to speak, lawyers wanting to represent other victims. I ignored most of them. But one call I answered. It was from a woman named Sharon Wu. She ran a nonprofit that provided legal assistance to elderly people facing financial exploitation.
Mrs. Mercer, I read your story. What you did was extraordinary, and I was wondering if you'd consider helping us. How? We need funding. We need resources. We need people who understand what it's like to fight this battle. You could make a real difference. I thought about the settlement money sitting untouched in my accounts, about how empty it felt to have won without having anyone to share it with. Tell me more.
Over the next month, I threw myself into Sharon's organization. I donated money. I attended meetings. I listened to stories from people who'd been robbed by their own children, their caregivers, their trusted advisors. It gave me something to do besides sit in my condo feeling sorry for myself. And it gave me perspective. One afternoon, I met with an 80-year-old woman named Dorothy, whose daughter had stolen nearly $40,000 from her over 3 years. Dorothy was too afraid to press charges because she didn't want to lose her only child. "She's still my daughter," Dorothy kept saying. "No matter what she did, she's still my baby." I understood that. Even now, even after everything, Adrian was still my son. "What would you do if you could go back?" I asked her. Dorothy thought for a long time. "I'd have told the truth sooner. I'd have stopped pretending everything was fine. Maybe if I'd been honest about what was happening, she would have gotten help before it went this far." Her words haunted me for days. Had I waited too long? Had I let things go too far before finally fighting back? Would it have been different if I'd confronted the Vaughns privately instead of exploding at the retirement party? I didn't know, but I was starting to understand that there were no clean answers, no perfect choices, just decisions made in moments of pain and fear and anger, and then living with the consequences. 4 months after the settlement, I was at Sharon's office reviewing grant applications when my phone rang. Adrian. I stared at his name for 3 rings, my heart hammering. Then I answered. "Mom?" His voice was rough, uncertain. "Adrian. I read the article, the one in the Metropolitan Journal. And I think we need to talk. Really talk. Not on the phone. Can I come see you?" Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect myself from more disappointment, more betrayal. But he was still my son. "Okay," I said. "When?" "Now? I'm in my car. I can be there in 20 minutes. I gave him the address of my new condo and hung up before I could change my mind. Sharon looked up from her desk. "Everything okay?" "I don't know yet." Adrian arrived exactly 20 minutes later. I watched him from my window as he got out of his car, looking up at the building like he was trying to gather courage. When I opened the door, he looked different, thinner, older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Hi," he said. "Come in." He walked into my condo and looked around, taking in the space. The furniture he recognized from my old apartment. The boxes still unpacked in the corner. "You moved."
I had to. The old place wasn't safe anymore. He flinched. "I'm sorry. I should have been there. Should have protected you from all that. But you weren't. I know." He sat on my old couch. I read the article 3 times, and every time I kept thinking about what you said, about how I learned to be ashamed of you, about how I chose Celeste's family over you. Did I lie? No. You didn't lie. And that's what's been killing me for the past 4 months. I stood there at your retirement party and let Celeste humiliate you. I stood there in your apartment and accused you of being the problem. I stood there through everything, and I was so worried about being fair to everyone that I forgot to just be a decent son to my own mother. Tears were running down his face now. He didn't bother wiping them away. "I was embarrassed of you," he continued. "I was embarrassed of your small apartment and your old car, and the way you lived so differently from Celeste's family. And I thought that made me better than you somehow, more successful, more sophisticated. I thought I'd outgrown you." "Adrian, no, let me finish. I need to say this. You gave me everything. You paid for my education.
You helped me start my business. You sacrificed your whole life so I could have opportunities. And I repaid you by letting my wife treat you like garbage and siding with people who tried to rob you. I'm ashamed of myself, Mom. I'm so ashamed I can barely look at myself in the mirror. I sat down next to him. Celeste told me she's pregnant. He nodded. She did. 3 weeks after she told you. We're having a daughter. How do you feel about that? Terrified, excited, confused. We're separated, but we're trying to work through things. For the baby. Maybe for each other, too. I don't know yet. Do you love her? He was quiet for a long time. I think I love who I thought she was, but I'm not sure that person ever existed. I'm not sure I know her at all. That's honest. You want to know the worst part? I looked at her family and I saw everything I thought I wanted. The estate, the connections, the history. I thought marrying into that would make me somebody. Like your success wasn't enough. Like what I'd built wasn't enough. I needed their validation. And now? Now I see it was all fake. They were broke and desperate and using everyone around them to maintain an illusion, and I fell for it completely. I reached over and took his hand. You're not the first person to be fooled by appearances. But I should have known better. I should have seen through it. Maybe. But you were in love. Love makes people stupid. He laughed. It came out wet and broken. You would know. You loved me enough to hide who you were for 30 years. I did. And look where it got us. Would you do it differently? If you could go back? I thought about that. About all the choices I'd made. About the woman I'd pretended to be and the woman I actually was. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wishes I'd been honest from the beginning. Let you grow up knowing the truth. But part of me thinks you needed to believe you did it on your own. Needed that pride. I don't know which version would have been better. I wish you'd trusted me with the truth. I wish you'd stood up for me when it mattered. We sat in silence for a while, both of us crying, both of us holding on to each other like we were drowning. Finally, Adrian spoke. Can we fix this? Can we get back to being a family? I don't know if we can get back to what we were, but maybe we can build something new, something more honest. I'd like that. It won't be easy. I'm still angry, you're still confused, and there's so much hurt between us. I know, but I want to try. I want my daughter to know her grandmother, the real grandmother, not the woman you pretended to be. Something in my chest cracked open. I want that too. Adrian wiped his eyes. Celeste wants to apologize to you, properly. She's been too scared to call. I'm not ready for that yet. I understand. But maybe someday? Maybe. He stood up to leave, then stopped. Can I ask you something? The money. All of it. What are you going to do with it? I thought about the work with Sharon, about Dorothy and all the other people who'd been exploited and abandoned. I'm going to use it to help people who can't help themselves. People in situations like mine, but without the resources to fight back. Adrian smiled. It was small and sad, but genuine. That sounds like something you'd do. Is that a compliment? Yeah, Mom, it is. After he left, I sat in my condo and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the naive kind that believed everything would magically get better, but the harder, more realistic kind that understood repair was possible even if restoration wasn't. Adrian and I started talking regularly after that. Awkward conversations at first. Careful. Testing the waters. But gradually they got easier. He told me about his marriage counseling with Celeste, about how they were trying to rebuild trust, about the baby girl they were expecting in March. I told him about Sharon's nonprofit, about the work I was doing, about slowly figuring out who I was when I wasn't hiding anymore. We had dinner once a week. Nothing fancy, just food and conversation and the slow, painful work of learning to be honest with each other. 6 months after the settlement, Adrian brought Celeste to my condo. She looked different too. Softer somehow. Her designer clothes replaced with maternity wear from regular stores. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was 7 months pregnant and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with money. Mrs. Mercer, she said when I opened the door. Her voice shook. Thank you for seeing me. Come in. We sat in my living room, Adrian between us like a buffer. Celeste's hands twisted in her lap. I don't know where to start. The beginning works, I said. She took a shaky breath.
I grew up thinking money was the most important thing. My parents raised me to believe that wealth meant worth, that people without money were less than. And I absorbed all of that. I believed it completely. I know. When I met Adrian, I saw an opportunity.
He was successful, rising, from a family that wouldn't interfere or make demands. My parents were thrilled. They thought he was the answer to all their problems.
He was their ATM. Yes, and I was complicit in that. I encouraged him to invest with my father. I pushed for us to buy the house my parents picked out. I facilitated everything because I thought that's what family did. Support each other, even if the support was really just enabling their lies.
Did you know about the guardianship petition?
Celeste's face crumpled.
Not at first, but I found out about a month before your retirement party.
My mother told me. She said it was the only way to solve their financial problems. That you wouldn't even notice because you'd be in a nice facility being taken care of. And you didn't stop them. I didn't think it was my place. I thought you wouldn't mind, that you'd probably be better off with professional care anyway.
I felt anger flare.
You thought I wouldn't mind being locked away and robbed? I thought you were poor, Celeste's voice broke. I thought you were struggling and alone and that we were actually helping. I didn't know about your money. I didn't know you were secretly wealthy. I just saw a lonely old woman living in a tiny apartment and I thought my parents' plan was actually mercy. Mercy, I repeated. The word tasted bitter.
I was so wrong about everything, about you, about what matters, about who I was supposed to be. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. I humiliated you at your party because I wanted everyone to see that I was better than you, that I'd married up, that I'd escaped the kind of life you represented, and now I can't stop thinking about it, can't stop seeing your face when I called you useless, can't stop hating myself for being that cruel.
You were cruel, I agreed. You were entitled and shallow and mean. You judged me without knowing anything about me. I know. But you're not the only one who made mistakes. I hid who I was. I let people underestimate me. I played small and then got angry when people treated me like I was small. There's plenty of blame to go around. Celeste looked up. Are you saying you forgive me?
I'm saying I understand what it's like to be shaped by your upbringing, to believe things about yourself and the world that turn out to be wrong. You were raised by people who valued the wrong things, just like I was raised to believe that sacrificing yourself for others was noble. I don't deserve your understanding. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway, not for you, for my son, for my granddaughter who's coming in 2 months. Celeste put her hand on her belly. She's going to know the truth about all of this. When she's old enough, we're going to tell her everything, the good and the bad. We're not going to hide things the way our parents did.
Good, I said.
Hiding things just makes them worse.
Adrian reached over and took both our hands. Can we start over? Not forget what happened, but maybe move forward differently? I looked at my son, at the wife who'd hurt me, at the grandchild I hadn't met yet, and I made a choice. We can try. It wasn't forgiveness, not complete, not yet. The hurt was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But it was a start, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning in March, Adrian called me at 6 a.m. She's here, Mom, the baby. Can you come to the hospital? I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets to St. Catherine's Medical Center. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Anticipation mixed with fear mixed with something I couldn't quite name. Adrian met me in the hallway outside the maternity ward. He looked exhausted and elated and terrified all at once. She's perfect, he said. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. She has Celeste's eyes. What's her name? He smiled. Evelyn Grace Mercer. We're calling her Grace. Something in my chest broke open completely. You named her after me. Of course we did. Despite everything, despite all the mistakes and pain, you're still the strongest person I know. We want our daughter to have that strength. I started crying, couldn't help it. 30 years of hiding, months of war, weeks of careful reconstruction, and it all came down to this moment. My name carried forward, my legacy not in money or victories, but in a tiny human who hadn't asked for any of this mess. Adrian took my hand. Come meet her. Celeste was in the hospital bed, looking exhausted and radiant, holding a bundle wrapped in pink blankets. She looked up when we entered. Evelyn?
Thank you for coming. I walked to the bed slowly, carefully, like I was approaching something sacred. Can I hold her? Of course. Celeste placed the baby in my arms. She was tiny and perfect, and completely unaware that she was named after a woman who'd spent months destroying her maternal grandparents and nearly losing her father in the process. Grace opened her eyes and looked at me. Really looked, like she was trying to figure out who I was.
Hi, sweetheart, I whispered. I'm your grandmother. The messy, complicated, stubborn one who made a lot of mistakes but loved your daddy enough to fight for what was right. Adrian laughed through tears. That's one way to introduce yourself. She should know the truth, that her grandmother isn't perfect, that I fought wars I maybe didn't need to fight, that I won battles but lost things that mattered, that I'm still figuring out how to be a person. Celeste spoke quietly. She should also know that her grandmother refused to be invisible, that when people tried to erase her, she fought back, that she survived. I looked at Celeste, at this woman who'd been my enemy, who was now, somehow, family again. Your parents, I said. How are they? Surviving, working, learning to live with less. My mother says it's harder than she expected. My father had a heart attack 2 months ago, small one. He's okay now, but it scared them. I'm sorry. Are you? I thought about Richard and Patricia, about the people they'd been and the people they'd become. Yeah, I said. I am. I didn't want them destroyed. I just wanted them to stop pretending, to face consequences. But I didn't want your father to have a heart attack. They ask about you sometimes, wonder how you're doing. What do you tell them? The truth? That you're doing better than they are, that you're using your money to help people, that you're rebuilding your life. I looked down at Grace, sleeping peacefully in my arms, unaware of the complicated family she'd been born into. Tell them I'm okay, I said. Tell them I hope they figure out how to be okay too. It wasn't reconciliation. I wasn't ready for that. Might never be. But it was recognition that they were human, that they'd made terrible choices out of desperation and fear, that their punishment had been severe enough, that I could let go of the anger without forgetting what they'd done. Can I ask you something? Celeste said. The money? The settlement? Was it worth it? I looked at Adrian, at Celeste, at the baby in my arms. I don't know, I admitted. I got justice. I got vindication. I got my dignity back. But I almost lost my son. I destroyed people. I became someone I didn't recognize. But you also became someone who wouldn't accept being treated like nothing, Adrian said. Someone who demanded respect. That matters. Does it? If the cost is relationships and peace and your own humanity? I think, Celeste said carefully, that you had to go through it to get to where you are now. You had to fight that hard to prove you could. You had to burn everything down to rebuild it right. Maybe she was right. Maybe the destruction had been necessary. Maybe you couldn't build something honest on a foundation of lies and hiding. Or maybe I was just rationalizing choices I couldn't take back. Either way, Grace was here, warm and alive in my arms. A new beginning that had nothing to do with the past except learning from it. Your grandmother is going to spoil you, I told her, but she's also going to teach you to stand up for yourself, to know your worth, to never let anyone make you feel small. And to be honest, Adrian added, to not hide who you are. And to forgive, Celeste said quietly, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Grace yawned, unconcerned with our promises and plans. She was just a baby, perfect and new and untouched by all our mess. And sitting there in that hospital room, holding my granddaughter while my son and his wife watched, I felt something I hadn't felt in a year. Complete. Not happy, not exactly. The wounds were still too fresh for that. But complete. Like all the scattered pieces of my life were finally in the same room, battered and broken, but together. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than enough. Grace changed everything and nothing all at once. She didn't magically erase the past year, didn't make the betrayals hurt less or the broken trust suddenly whole, but she gave us something to build toward instead of just picking through ruins. I visited 3 times a week those first few months, brought groceries, held the baby while Celeste showered or Adrian caught up on sleep, learned to change diapers again after 30 years of not needing to. It was strange being in their home. The house they'd bought with money from Richard
decorated with furniture Celeste had chosen when she still thought wealth meant worth. Every room held reminders of the people they used to be. But slowly, things changed. The expensive art came down, replaced with photos of Grace. The designer furniture got stained with spit up and baby formula. The perfection crumbled into something messier and more real. One afternoon, I was rocking Grace to sleep while Celeste folded laundry. She'd been quiet all day, distracted. Finally, she spoke. "My mother called yesterday." I kept rocking, didn't say anything. "She wanted to know if she could visit, see Grace." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I needed to ask you first." I looked at Celeste, at this woman who'd humiliated me, whose family had tried to rob me, who'd slowly, painfully become someone I could almost trust again. "Why would you need to ask me?" "Because you're here 3 times a week. You're part of Grace's life, my mother isn't, and I know what she did to you, what they both did. I won't bring her around if it hurts you." Something shifted in my chest. This woman who'd once valued appearances above everything was now choosing my comfort over her own mother's feelings. "Do you want to see her?" I asked. Celeste's hand stilled on the laundry. "I don't know. Part of me does. She's still my mother, but part of me is so angry at her for what she did, for how she raised me, for teaching me all the wrong things about what matters. You can be both, angry and loving. It's not either or. How do you do it? How do you forgive Adrian for choosing them over you?" I thought about that, about forgiveness and what it actually meant. "I didn't forgive him," I said. "Not in the way people think of forgiveness. I didn't forget what he did or decide it was okay. I just decided that holding on to the anger was hurting me more than it was hurting him, so I let it go. But that doesn't mean I trust him the way I used to." "Will you ever trust him again?" "I don't know, maybe. Or maybe we'll build a different kind of relationship, one that's honest about the cracks instead of pretending they're not there." Celeste sat down on the couch next to me. Grace was asleep now, her tiny fist curled against my chest. "I don't know how to have an honest relationship with my mother," Celeste admitted. "We've always been about appearances, about saying the right things and maintaining the image. I don't know how to be real with her." "Then maybe start by telling her that. And if she can't handle it, then you have your answer about whether she's capable of change." Celeste invited Patricia to visit the following week. I made sure I wasn't there, gave them space to figure out what their relationship could be now that the lies were exposed and the money was gone. Adrian told me later that it went badly. Patricia spent the whole visit crying about how hard her life had become, about the rental apartment and the receptionist job and how none of her old friends would speak to her anymore. She held Grace for maybe 5 minutes before handing her back and saying babies made her nervous. She didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge what she'd done, just wallowed in her own victimhood and left Celeste feeling worse than before. "She'll never change," Celeste told me the next day. Her eyes were red from crying. "She'll never admit she was wrong or take responsibility. She's going to spend the rest of her life blaming you for destroying her instead of recognizing that she destroyed herself." I know. How do you accept that? How do you live with knowing some people will never see the truth? I shifted Grace to my other arm. She was getting bigger every day, already starting to smile, starting to recognize faces. "You stop needing them to see it," I said. "You stop needing validation from people who are incapable of giving it. You build your life with the people who can see the truth and let the others go." That sounds lonely. Sometimes it is, but it's less lonely than surrounding yourself with people who make you feel worthless. Celeste was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I told my mother she can't visit again until she's ready to apologize to you. Really apologize. Not just say words, but mean them." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Because Grace is going to grow up watching how we treat people. And I don't want her to learn that it's okay to hurt someone and never take responsibility. I don't want her to be like my mother. Or like I was." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "She won't be. Because you're learning. You're changing. That's more than some people ever do." The work with Sharon's nonprofit grew. We secured grants, hired staff, started a legal clinic for elderly people facing financial exploitation. I found myself spending more time at the office than at home, throwing myself into cases that reminded me of my own. But there was one case I couldn't stop thinking about. Her name was Linda Martinez. 72 years old. Her son had convinced her to sign over power of attorney 3 years ago, then systematically drained her accounts and sold her house out from under her. She was living in a shelter when she found us. "I just want my son to admit what he did," she told me in our first meeting. "I don't even care about the money anymore. I just want him to look me in the eye and acknowledge that he stole from his own mother." I saw myself in her, the same desperate need for recognition, for validation, for someone to admit the truth. "What if he never does?" I asked gently. "What if he's like my daughter-in-law's mother and just refuses to take responsibility?" Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Then I wasted 3 years of my life trying to get blood from a stone." Her words haunted me for weeks. Was that what I'd done? Wasted a year of my life fighting for an admission of guilt that some people would never give? Destroyed relationships and burned bridges just to prove I was right? I brought it up with Adrian one evening. He'd stopped by my condo after work, something he did now once a week, just to talk, to check in, to slowly rebuild what we'd lost. "Do you think I went too far?" I asked him. "With the Vaughns?" He thought about it, really thought. "I think you did what you had to do to protect yourself, but yeah, maybe it went further than it needed to." "Do you resent me for it?" "Sometimes. When I think about Celeste's parents losing everything, when I see how hard she's struggling with the guilt and anger, but then I remember that they tried to rob you, that they raised a daughter who thought it was okay to humiliate you, and the resentment fades. But it doesn't disappear. No, it doesn't disappear. But Mom, nothing about this was ever going to be clean. You could have handled it differently, and there still would have been pain and anger and resentment. You could have stayed quiet and let them rob you, and then you'd be resenting yourself instead of wondering if you went too far. So there was no right answer. There was no perfect answer, but you made a choice. You chose yourself. That's not wrong." I looked at my son, at this man who'd hurt me so deeply and was now, slowly, learning to see me as a person instead of just a mother. "I'm still angry at you sometimes," I admitted, "for the retirement party, for choosing Celeste, for all of it. I know, I'm still angry at myself, but I'm also proud of you for going to therapy, for working on your marriage, for being a good father to Grace." "You can be both," he said, echoing my words to Celeste. "Angry and proud. It's not either or." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside my window, the city lights flickered, the same view I'd watched a year ago when my life was falling apart. "Grace asked about you today," Adrian said suddenly. "She's 4 months old. She can't talk. Not in words, but she looked around when she woke up from her nap, like she was looking for you. Celeste thinks she knows your voice." Something warm spread through my chest. "Yeah? Yeah, you're her person. After me and Celeste, you're the one she wants." That night, alone in my condo, I thought about Linda Martinez and her son who'd never apologize, about Patricia Vaughn and her refusal to take responsibility, about all the people who hurt others and never admitted it. And I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I didn't need them to admit what they'd done. I already knew. I had proof. I had evidence. I had the truth. Their denial didn't change reality. It just changed whether they could live with themselves. I called Linda the next morning. "I've been thinking about your case," I said, "and I want to ask you something. If your son never apologizes, what would you need to move forward?" She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. What did you need?" I needed to stop making my worth dependent on whether people acknowledged what they did to me. I needed to build a life that didn't revolve around being right or being vindicated. I needed to find purpose beyond my pain. "How did you do that?" I looked around my condo, at the photos of Grace on my bookshelf, at the case files from Sharon's nonprofit stacked on my desk, at the life I'd built in the aftermath of war. "I'm still figuring it out," I admitted, "but I think it starts with helping people who are where I was, and letting the people who hurt me become irrelevant to my happiness." Linda laughed. It came out bitter. "That sounds impossible." It is impossible, until suddenly it's not. 6 months after Grace was born, on a gray October afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Adrian was at work. Celeste had taken Grace to a doctor's appointment.
I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. Richard Vaughn stood in my hallway looking older than I remembered. Grayer, smaller. I considered not answering, considered calling Marcus or Adrian or someone to run interference, but curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Richard. Evelyn, thank you for seeing me. I haven't seen you. You're standing in my hallway. He flinched. Right, of course. I need to talk to you. Please, 5 minutes.
Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood awkwardly in my living room, looking around like he was cataloging evidence of how I lived now. The comfortable furniture, the photos, the life I'd built without him or his family. You look well, he said finally. What do you want, Richard? I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. Not the half-hearted thing I did at the settlement, a real apology. Okay, I'm listening. He sat down without being invited, looked at his hands. I was desperate. 7 years ago, when I came to you for that loan, I was about to lose everything. The business was failing. Patricia was threatening to leave. I was drowning, and you threw me a lifeline. And you never intended to pay it back.
No, I intended to. I really did. But then the business didn't recover like I thought it would. And the debt kept growing, and Patricia kept spending, and I kept borrowing more to cover the previous loans. It was like quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. That doesn't excuse what you did. I know. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm trying to explain how I got from being a desperate man, asking for help, to being someone who would try to have you declared incompetent and steal everything you own. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. I became a monster, he said, step by step, justification by justification, telling myself it was okay because you had more than you needed, because you were old and alone and wouldn't miss it, because we needed it more. I became someone I don't recognize. Why are you telling me this? Because I had a heart attack 2 months ago, and when I was lying in that hospital bed thinking I might die, all I could think about was the things I'd done, the people I'd hurt, the man I'd become, and I realized I couldn't die without trying to make it right. You can't make it right, Richard. You can't undo what you did. I know, but I can acknowledge it. I can stop pretending I was the victim. I can admit that you had every right to do what you did. I sat down across from him. Do you know what the worst part was? Not the money, not even the attempted guardianship. It was watching my son choose your family over me. It was being humiliated at my own retirement party and having no one defend me. That's what broke me. Not the theft. The abandonment. I'm sorry, Richard said. For all of it. For raising a daughter who thought cruelty was acceptable. For using your son. For trying to rob you. I'm sorry. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the rage that had fueled me through the darkest parts of the past year. But I was tired. So tired. I accept your apology, I said. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. Richard nodded. That's more than I expected. Don't mistake acceptance for reconciliation. I'm not interested in being friends or family or anything else with you. I'm just choosing to let go of the anger because it's not serving me anymore. I understand. He stood to leave, stopped at the door. Grace is beautiful, he said. I saw a photo on Celeste's phone. She looks like Adrian when he was a baby. She does? Will you let her know about me when she's older? I'll tell her the truth, that her maternal grandfather made terrible choices and hurt people he should have protected, that he lost everything because of his own greed and desperation, but also that he eventually took responsibility for what he did. That's fair. After he left, I sat in my condo for a long time, processing what had just happened. Richard's apology didn't fix anything, didn't erase the past or heal the wounds, but it did something I didn't expect. It released me. I'd spent a year fighting to be acknowledged, fighting to be heard, fighting to force people to admit what they'd done. And here was Richard, offering exactly what I'd wanted. Not because I forced him, not because a court made him, but because he'd finally faced himself and couldn't live with what he saw. That night, when Adrian called to check in, I told him about the visit. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter, like I've been carrying something heavy and finally got to put it down. Do you think he meant it, the apology? I think he meant it in that moment. Whether he means it tomorrow or next month, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that I heard it and I can move on. Mom? Yeah? I'm sorry too, for everything, for choosing them, for not standing up for you, for making you feel like you weren't enough. I know you are, Adrian, and I'm working on forgiving you. Not today, not all at once, but slowly, little by little. That's all I can ask for.
Grace turned 1 year old in March. We had a small party at Adrian and Celeste's house. Just family, just the people who mattered. I watched my granddaughter smash cake into her face and laugh with pure joy, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment, not happiness. Not exactly. There was still too much history, too much hurt for uncomplicated happiness. But contentment, the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd survived. I'd fought. I'd won some battles and lost others. And I was still here. "What are you thinking about?" Celeste asked. She'd come to stand next to me, watching Grace with the same soft expression I probably had on my face. "I'm thinking about how different everything is from a year ago. Better different or worse different? Both. Different. Celeste laughed. "That's the most honest answer I've heard in a while. I'm trying to be more honest about everything. No more pretending to be small, no more hiding who I am." "How's that working out?" I thought about my work with Sharon's nonprofit, about the cases we'd won and the people we'd helped, about Linda Martinez, who'd finally stopped waiting for her son's apology and started rebuilding her life, about the woman I'd become after everything burned down. It's terrifying, I admitted, being visible, being seen as successful. People treat me differently now. Some respect me more. Some resent me. Some don't know what to make of me. Which do you prefer? The honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when people don't like what they see. At least it's real. Grace toddled over, cake smeared across her face, and reached up for me. I picked her up, not caring that she was getting frosting all over my expensive blouse. This blouse that cost more than I used to spend on clothes in a year, that I'd bought without guilt or justification, that I wore because I liked it, and I could afford it, and I was done apologizing for having money. "Gamma," Grace said. Her first real word. Grandmother filtered through 1-year-old pronunciation. My heart cracked open all over again. "Yeah, baby, I'm here." Adrian appeared with his phone, snapping photos. "She's been practicing that all week. Wanted to surprise you." Consider me surprised. We took 1,000 pictures that day. Grace with her cake. Grace with her parents. Grace with me. A family portrait that would have been impossible a year ago. Later, after the party ended and Grace was asleep and I was helping clean up, Celeste asked me something she'd been avoiding for months. "Do you think we're good people?" I stopped wiping down the counter. "What? You, me, Adrian, after everything that happened, after all the hurt we caused and received, do you think we're good people?" I thought about that, about the question itself and what it implied. "I think we're complicated people," I said finally. "I think we've all made mistakes, hurt people we loved, made choices we regret. But I also think we're trying to do better, and maybe that's what makes someone good. Not being perfect, but being willing to grow." My mother called yesterday, asked if she could see Grace. "What did you say?" I said no. Not until she can admit what she did, not until she stops blaming you for her problems. "How did she take it?" "She hung up on me, then called back an hour later crying and saying I was abandoning her in her time of need." I saw the pain on Celeste's face, the guilt, the confusion of loving someone who'd hurt you and taught you all the wrong things. "Setting boundaries with toxic people doesn't make you a bad daughter," I said. "It makes you a strong woman who knows her worth." "But it feels awful." "It always does. That's how you know you're doing it right. If it was easy, everyone would do it." Celeste leaned against the counter, exhausted. I wish I could go back and be raised by different people. People who taught me that kindness mattered more than status, that character mattered more than wealth. "You can't change your past, but you can change what you teach Grace. You can break the cycle." Is that what you did? Breaking the cycle? I thought about my own mother, about growing up poor and learning that sacrifice was noble, that making yourself small was virtuous, that your worth came from how much you gave up for others. "I tried to break the cycle," I said, "but I think I just created a different kind of damage." I taught Adrian that success meant he had to do everything alone, that accepting help was weakness, that his mother was someone to be ashamed of instead of someone to learn from. But you're fixing it now, with Grace, with us. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Try to do better than our parents did. Mess up in different ways, hope our kids forgive us. We finished cleaning in comfortable silence. When I left that night, Celeste hugged me at the door. Really hugged me. Not the stiff, obligatory embraces from before, but something genuine. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on us, for fighting for yourself even when it meant fighting against us, for showing me what strength actually looks like. Thank you for being willing to change, for loving my son, for giving me grace. Driving home through the city streets, I thought about the past year and a half, about everything I'd lost and gained, about the woman I'd been at that retirement party and the woman I was now. I'd destroyed a family, bankrupted people, torn apart relationships, fought wars that left everyone wounded, but I'd also survived, learned my worth, demanded respect, stopped hiding. Was it worth it? That was the question everyone kept asking. The reporters, the people at Sharon's nonprofit, Adrian, myself. I still didn't have a clean answer, but I had Grace saying gamma and reaching for me with sticky hands. I had Adrian calling 3 times a week just to talk. I had Celeste asking for advice and actually listening. I had work that mattered and money that meant something because I was using it to help people. I had a life that was mine, messy and imperfect and honest. And maybe that was worth more than a clean answer. The city lights blurred past my window as I drove. The same city where I'd hidden for 30 years, where I'd built an empire in secret, where I'd finally stopped pretending to be small. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. New case just came in. Woman in her 70s, son trying to force her into a nursing home so he can sell her house. Sounds familiar. Interested? I smiled. Typed back. Send me the details. Because this was what I did now. I fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. I used my story to help others write different endings to their own stories. I'd learned the hard way that justice was complicated, that winning and losing weren't always clear, that standing up for yourself meant accepting that some people would hate you for it. But I'd also learned that being small didn't protect you, that hiding didn't keep you safe, that love without respect was just another word for being used. And I'd learned that it was never too late to choose yourself, not in a selfish way, not in a way that destroyed everything around you without cause, but in a way that said you mattered, your dignity mattered, your truth mattered, even if it cost you everything to prove it. I pulled into my parking garage and sat in my car for a moment before going up to my condo, thinking about Linda Martinez and Richard Vaughn and Patricia, who still couldn't apologize, and my own mother who'd taught me that sacrifice was the highest form of love. They were all wrong. Sacrifice wasn't love. Sacrifice was just sacrifice. Love was seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. Love was being honest even when it hurt. Love was setting boundaries and demanding respect and refusing to accept crumbs when you deserved the whole meal. Love was teaching your granddaughter that her grandmother wasn't just a nice old lady who babysat and baked cookies. Love was making sure she grew up knowing that women could be powerful and wealthy and demanding and still worthy of love. Love was admitting you'd been wrong, apologizing, growing, changing. Love was complicated and messy and never worked out the way you planned, but it was worth fighting for. Even when the fighting destroyed you, even when winning felt like losing, even when you ended up alone in a parking garage at 9 p.m. crying in your car over everything you'd lost to become everything you were. Because, at least when I looked in the mirror now, I recognized the woman staring back. And she was nobody's victim. She was nobody's embarrassment. She was nobody's secret. She was just Evelyn Mercer, grandmother, fighter, survivor, flawed human being trying to do better. And that was finally, impossibly, enough. I wiped my eyes, grabbed my purse, and headed up to my condo. Tomorrow I'd review the new case. Tomorrow I'd visit Grace. Tomorrow I'd keep building this honest, complicated, imperfect life I'd fought so hard for. But tonight, I was just going to sit in my home that I'd bought with my own money and feel everything I'd been too scared to feel for 30 years. The pride, the pain, the victory, the loss. All of it. Because that's what it meant to finally be whole. Not perfect, not healed, not over it. Just whole. And for the first time in my entire life, that was more than enough.